Hi, this is Scott Trout, CEO of the domestic litigation firm Cordell & Cordell. There are many life changes that can happen after divorce that make it difficult or impossible to uphold requirements of your divorce decree. The orders issued in a divorce are based on the facts presented at that time, but the circumstances used in issuing those orders can obviously change. If you feel a modification to your court orders might be necessary, talk to us at Cordell & Cordell.
Contact CordellCordell.com, 1065 East Hillsdale Boulevard, Suite 310, Foster City, California, 94404.
You know, it's a daily process, Josh.
Hello. I can't hear you, and you can't hear me.
You're listening to Nearly Informed.
I'm going to hear, but not in here. Not here.
Oh, now then now. Now can you hear?
Yeah, now I can.
Now you can hear it?
Yes.
All right, we're slowly working through it.
You're listening to Nearly Informed.
What's happening, everybody? It's Brian Moote, Nearly Informed. Friday. Comedian Josh Nasar hanging out with me today.
I'm so impressed.
Stop
it. It was so unprofessional. It was so professional.
You know what? I'm trying to get into broadcast mode.
Can you put that music on again?
You want to hear it?
I just want to hear dun, dun, dun. Yeah!
It's got some serious stuff going on right now.
You're listening to Nearly Informed.
And we've got the voice guy, too. Yeah. You're listening to Nearly Informed. It's the premise of the show, Josh. Nearly Informed. Sometimes we talk news, sometimes comedy, sometimes whatever. But if it's ever anything let's just say it this way. We're nearly informed on everything. So it's not. So if you're listening and you're like, "Whoa, I mean, that's wrong. That's wrong." You'd be like, "Well, yeah, we didn't say we were, specialists. We said we're nearly."
I think it's perfect.
It's kind of how I live my life, nearly knowing about everything. But I think that's kind of how comedians roll. You just get used to being confidently charging into any endeavor.
There's a comedian named Ari Manis, and he has a podcast, and it's something like a guy who gives advice, and he knows nothing.
Right.
So he admits freely, I know nothing.
That's kind of what we do, every time I'm on stage. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't take much for you to break me of my opinion. Like, that's fine.
I would say I'm available to think that other people have different realities, but I'm pretty solid, in my opinion. I've done a lot of therapy in 12 steps, so I'm pretty, honestly, I'm really solid, and I'm also available to go, other people have different realities, and I'm definitely not 100% right all the time.
I always think it's interesting when I've met people who have never done therapy and have a really weird opinion of it for never doing it. I mean, I've done extensive therapy.
I don't want to bring that up, right? I don't want to talk about things. I've already moved past it. I'm
right.
not
you haven't. You have not moved. Anytime you say, like, I'm good with that, man. I'm fine.
I just think it's the best thing. Just to sum it up, it's like when you talk, it's like a little crystal, and you can see, it comes out of your mouth, and you can see all around it as opposed to it being inside you. And
right.
You can totally see all the nonsense. And now, as a comic, I can put it into my jokes and be like, oh, I have problems because my stepdad locked me in the basement, and here's the joke.
Your stepdad really locked you in the basement?
Yeah, he used to lock me in the basement and only put a glass of milk on the top of the stairs for me to eat.
Like you were a kitten. Like he's just feeding you like a little kitten. Like your stepdad did not raise anything.
That's amazing is I've done that joke for years,
Really?
And I've never realized that I'm basically a little kid.
He left a little bowl of milk out for you.
Dude, high five me because you just tagged up that joke.
That's so funny, though. Pull out a little dish.
That's literally what it was, though. I was his kitten.
I mean, it is important, man. I remember when, because I have a psychology degree and I have a social work degree.
You have a psychology degree?
And a master's in social work. And
you are going to be so fucking famous.
I don't know about that, all that stuff.
Dude, there's so many. All right.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the funny part. I did all this coursework. I took all these classes in counseling and, all the techniques, paraphrasing. This is what I'm hearing you say, Josh. I'm hearing you say your dad locked you in the basement. But what I'm thinking is he treated you like a kitten. But the funny part was until I actually went into therapy myself when I was going, like my dad went to prison, came out, and I was like, I'm fine, we're good. And then you start talking about it with somebody who's completely objective, third party, listening to your stories. You're like, you hear them out loud. You're like, man, that's some weird, how did I make it through that?
Well, we think that's our norm. You
Yeah.
know, because you lived it, you're kind of what is it called? Acclimated to it.
Right.
But when you hear, wait, your dad went to prison? What?
I know.
And not, you know, and then you kind of like you said, it's like I said, at Crystals, and you can look around and go, wow, maybe that is different.
It is like a funny way to be able to kind of like step outside, like you said, and look at like your life, like you said that, Crystal. You're looking at it like, oh, that's me. Woof.
And then you can own it and make it funny or enjoy it, as opposed to it like I said before, is that that's part of my story. That's no longer my story.
Right.
You know, which is amazing. And I love talking about it. Like, I just remember this. My stepdad had to see a court-appointed psychiatrist, and this guy escaped the concentration camps, and he said they haven't seen anybody like my stepfather since the Nazis.
Jeez.
But I didn't realize it until literally just saying it to you now, and I stepped out, and I'm like, oh, that's very weird. I wonder if my stepdad and your dad knew each other.
That's insane. Like, you have someone who's escaped the craziest tyranny, social injustices, murder, and to go and to talk to dad and be like, oh, yeah, I mean, like, I've seen that personality before. Not in 30 years.
They said, yeah, he literally said that. He goes, I haven't seen anybody as manipulative and kind of a mastermind person as since the Nazis. And that was a direct quote.
I think you know what else, too, when you talk about, like, the manipulation part of learning, you know, people's personalities and that, is that the manipulation, you understand how deep and strong that is. Because we all say, like, oh, that guy's manipulative. No, you don't understand. Like, the people who are truly manipulative, you don't understand until you finally, like, step back and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, my ex-wife was an insane person. And it wasn't until I look back at, I mean, how did I put up with that? And it wasn't until I realized, like, oh, because it wasn't, now I'm just looking at it like a spectator. But in the moment, I was like in the fracas. Like, I was in the middle of it, not realizing that the decisions I was making weren't because I was just, oh, yeah, I'd love to do that. You know, you were just kind of forced to.
Yeah, and that's why, once again, not to be too deep, if you go to therapy, like, you can talk it out, and then you can hear, oh, I'm with this person, and they're insane, because you hear yourself saying the things that you're doing.
Yeah.
Like what you just said, you were in this
Right.
relationship, you didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, I try to tell my mom that. My mom is like someone who always encourages us to do therapy, and then she's the queen of... I talked to my friend Carol.
Oh, Carol!
I'm like, Mom, Carol...
First
She's
of
like,
all,
Carol's a good listener. I'm like, that's not
not to be this guy, but can you please put that on stage? I talked to Carol. I'm fine.
My friend Carol told me I'm good.
I mean,
all my mom's friends are like like characters in like a codependent comedy.
Will you
where it's
do
like
this?
Carol, Betty, and Mary Lou. You think any Carols or Bettys or Mary Lou's are giving you like tough love?
can you do this? Next time she tells you therapy, go, okay, how about this? Why don't I just talk to Carol? And is that okay if I... And then she'll say, well, no. You go, well, then why is it okay for you to talk to Carol, but I can't?
She's like, well, because Carol's my friend, Brian.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. I got a friend, my friend Jeff. He's
You know
going
what?
to talk to him.
I don't want my therapist to like me. I kind of want my therapist to hate everything about me a little bit. I mean, I want them to like have an appreciation for what I've gone. Well, I'm not saying to hate me. Well, I guess it's a
You
little.
literally just said hate me.
Well, I went like kind of the strong
You were being a comedian.
opposite stance. I don't want him to hate me. I want him to like come at me skeptically all the time, but also have a healthy like annoyance with me when I'm droning on in a way that's like kind of covering for my problems.
Well, yeah, they're supposed to be able to call you out, and then they say it like, this is what I'm hearing, Brian. I'm hearing that you are repeating these relationships over and over again and expecting different results. Did you see my therapist's voice?
I did. It's supposed to be soothing and calming.
Yes.
Though, you know what's funny? As you say, like, you sum up, like, oh, you're repeating the same thing over and over, expecting different results. All I hear is, like, yeah, like I'm doing stand-up every single night.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
100%.
Nearly Informed with Brad and Brian.
Well, that first segment flew, Josh Nasar. Solid 8.5 minutes of therapy talk. Where did you grow up?
I'm from Potomac, Maryland, land of the Jews.
Maryland. Is it really?
Yep, I grew up in the richest county in the nation, Beverly Hills 90210 was based in my high school, and we weren't that rich.
Really?
So I feel inadequate.
Was that a real thing that it was based on a high school in Maryland?
Darren Starr went to my high school, and it was supposed to be called Potomac 20854, and he came out here, pitch a show, and they go, no, let's make it Beverly Hills 90210.
That's interesting. It is a thing that it's a reference no one would really get.
No.
In terms of, unless you live on the East Coast. I have an uncle he went to Maryland, or grew up in Maryland, then went to Georgetown Prep High School, and eventually like some, East Coast school. The East Coast, that area is very old school America.
My mom says this, and it's cool. It's like out in Los Angeles, the actors are the rock stars. Back where we're from, the politicians are the rock stars.
Yeah.
So it's like old money, white which is changing now. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, that kind of old colonial Williamsburg kind of,
It's interesting. So when you moved out here, did you notice the lack of history that we have in terms of like colonial history, right?
I was such an amoeba. I was so just in my own head that I didn't notice any of that. Now I do. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But out here feels lighter to me. That back there feels heavier because it is like the Wild West out here. Like I wake up every day and I'm like, it's sunny. I can do anything I want. Back there, it's like you got to go to work. You got to sell insurance. You got to sell cars. You got to,
Yeah. Well, it's more of like that traditional struggle. Like you have out here in Los Angeles especially, there's really no path anyone can carve for you because you have one person who's been in town for 10 weeks and catches some monster break and becomes a star, and then you got somebody who does it for 35 years and then catches a break or whatever. So there's really no, out in certain parts of the country, and to a certain extent where I grew up in Seattle is the same way, you start doing a thing and then you're like, the next step is here, then here. Then here. And then when you get into creative businesses, it's like none of that matters.
My business partner, Josh Sandoval, always tells me, hey, when I ask him, like, hey, what do we do? He goes, the great thing about this is there's no yellow brick road.
Right.
You can do anything you want at any time. Like, I really think you're going to be huge on TV. Well, how? Because you came into radio and you did this. There's other people that come here and they go right to TV.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's amazing and it's fun.
That's funny. That's actually like the thing I told myself when I started doing radio was because I was living in Los Angeles and a radio station in Seattle, I auditioned for them. They're like, hey, would you come back to Seattle to do a morning show? And I remember having to talk myself into it because you get so hell-bent on one path. You think like, well, I gotta nah, man, like I just got passed at the Laugh Factory. Like I'd try to get my spot once a month at the Laugh Factory or put in my avails to the Improv. Yeah. But then the other party's like, what are you doing? Like you can go back to your hometown. You can have a consistent paycheck. You can get benefits for the first time in 5 years.
And still do the exact same thing you're trying to do here.
Still do stand-up every night.
You're still going to do stand-up.
Exactly.
Except you're going to live like a human. And now, guess what? How many ever years later, you're back here.
Right.
And now you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
You really are ahead of a lot of the people that you started with now because now you got some clout.
Well, but it's just all about taking risks in that regard, or just not turning down opportunities that maybe weren't the ones you thought of initially.
Brian, life begins at the end. I'm sorry.
You just break in a therapist's voice again on
Brian,
me?
and I even turned my body a little bit. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone.
I feel like you almost pulled out like an old pipe.
I did. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Yes.
Well, the funny part was going back to like the history of old school Maryland because I don't want to give up on that thread yet. I remember when I moved to Atlanta, I was so mystified by how old everything was, or like how little the people down there appreciate it. Just the history of how long that's been part of the country. I grew up in the Seattle area, like we were a state in like 1871 or something. Like the history there, like, oh, that's really old. That was built in 1906. Oh my God, that house is old. I remember driving to Savannah and my girlfriend was like, what are you staring at? And I was like, oh, this sign just said we're driving through an old, like an old plantation. She's like, what are you staring at? I'm like, the woods. She's like, why? And I'm like, I'm just trying to imagine if I was a slave, like how I would escape. You know what I mean? Like how, because all I've ever read, I've just heard about these places. I've never seen them.
Well, it's amazing. Like, 30 minutes from my house, you have the Washington Monument, all of the federal buildings, where all of these things have been taking place for hundreds of years. I mean, I can literally drive down in 40 minutes and see the White House, so, and, Colonial Williamsburg is, and they still reenact the North versus South fighting and all that. I mean, it's
that part is funny to me.
I mean, yeah, it is. But yeah, what you're saying is there is a lot of depth and gravity to it.
Yeah.
And you can go to the Smithsonian and you can, all these museums, and it is kind of cool. That all of that is located for me on the East Coast. That I would drive down from Maryland all the way to Florida on the 95. And there's just all these historical landmarks and everything where things happen.
Every coastal city.
Yeah.
And it's so weird too. I don't know if it's like this in Maryland, but probably not because it's more towards the north. But in the South, the way they approach slavery in the South is very it's delicate because of the fact that it happened in our backyard, and there's still a lot of segregation, not on
paper,
purposely, yeah, on paper, but it just happens, right? And so there's a lot of kind of like trying to distance as much as you can. That's what it feels like. Now, we were in Savannah, and we're walking down the waterfront in Savannah, and you're walking down this cobblestone. It's super old, and I'm just fascinated by all of it. And there's these like weird caverns that had bars on them, and they're like, ooh, these caverns, and like the first plaque, there's like 9 of them. The first plaque and is like, whoa, look at the architecture was designed to these arcs were designed to hold X amount of pounds per square foot of pressure. And I'm like, who cares about that? And the next one's like, oh, and during the import-export era, they'd hold like wheat and barley and alcohol. And I'm going on this thing. And then finally at the end, they're like, and also there's an unsubstantiated rumor that they had slaves in these things. And I'm like, of course they had slaves in these things.
Yeah, that's what it was for.
But that's exactly what they're built for. I mean, like, these had bars, and in the back of them, they had like oxygen, like just little vents for oxygen. So, my girlfriend was like, "No, I mean, who knows?" I'm like, they weren't built for barley. No one locks up their barley behind steel bars.
Not to be rude or interrupt you, but I still do that. And again, I don't want to be rude. This is your show.
I don't know what your neighborhood is. I don't know what kind of barley thieves you got roaming around your neighborhood.
But it's a totally different paradigm that they literally locked people up in there, and that was the accepted thing. Not all over the South, but a lot of the South. Like you said.
Yeah, that was the
and now you're touring it. Now
right.
You're touring it.
It is insane. It's insane. It's insane to me being someone who didn't, because I grew up thinking, "Ooh, that happened over there." Like when I first learned about history and slavery in this country and stuff. For me, I grew up on an island near Canada, and it was very white. And we always learned like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe those people on the complete opposite corner of the country were doing this to people. This is crazy." Like just thinking like, "Oh my God," like I can't imagine what those people are like. And then when I'm down there, I'm like, "Oh man." Like, you guys bear a lot of kind of like deep-seated guilt to the point at which you're like, well, maybe they had slaves in these. These are jail cells.
Not to get too deep, but that's why, like they say, never forget when it comes to the Holocaust or slavery, because when you start forgetting and not being able to attach to it, that's when that kind of nonsense can come. That's when that can come back, because you're like, oh, that was them. So it's really good that you went down there and you experienced that and you saw it firsthand.
Well, we were driving out there to Savannah, and when I had the conversation with my girlfriend about looking in the woods and being like, whoa. I mean, just trying to wrap my head around being a slave and like, you know what, I'm going for it. I'm out of here. And just like running through the woods and just trying to envision that. And then we started talking about the Civil War, and she's like, oh, yeah, it was over states' rights. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
She's like, oh, no, the Civil War was about states' rights. I'm like, yeah, right. The one to own human beings. She's like, no, there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, no. No, you guys emphasize, okay, maybe a tobacco tax that the North imposed, the government imposed on you because they wanted to like strong arm you into not owning human beings anymore. But the right was to own slaves. And she's like, I'm not really sure about that. And my girlfriend is a very intelligent woman, but grew up in the South learning about slavery in a second grade class in the South, where you have a very mixed split 50-50 of black and white kids. And they're not just going to sit there and be like, guys, I know there's half of you on each side. This is what it was. Like, hey, now go enjoy recess.
So you think they watered it down a little bit?
They watered it down a ton because I don't think they think kids can process it when you're in an environment.
It's a lot.
Oh my God.
If you were a child and to hear that, get it. I get what they're saying, but there has to be I don't know.
And you think you have to and you're identifying with those people. Like in your mind, you're like, so the people who look like me were doing this, the people that look like this, my friend who's sitting next to me.
And this could happen to me right now.
Right. Like, how am I supposed to move? Like, how am I supposed to move on with my day? I've always wanted to do a documentary about how kindergarten or first grade teachers in various parts of this country approach the topic of slavery in this country. Like in various neighborhoods and various school systems with different demographics, whether if it's an all-white school, if because I remember mine was all white, and they were like, look what they did, look what these Southerners did. And we're like, oh my God, these white devils in the South.
That was how they approached it, to make it the they. It was a they.
It was a they. But in the South, it's got to be kind of a, this happened here. But now you have a class because Atlanta is a very, in the metro city limits of Atlanta, it's very 50-50 black and white.
How long did you live there?
3 years. And there's, like, when I say this in like a way of fascination because I grew up in a very white city. Seattle's a very white city. Atlanta is such a diverse city with black and white that you don't even notice it anymore. Like, you don't even notice you're in a room full of, like, I wouldn't notice in Atlanta when I'm the only white guy in a bar. I just wouldn't notice it because there's so many more black people in Atlanta versus Seattle. You walk into a bar and it's all one ethnicity versus the other. You're like, oh, this feels weird. In Atlanta, it doesn't. Like, your lawyer, your doctor, like there's someone of every ethnicity is black and white is everything. Like, people running for governor, like it's hard to explain to people who haven't lived in that like breakdown. But there are cities in the South that are major cities with, a couple 100,000 people and is 75-80% black just because of the dynamics of the South. There's no way that they teach slavery to kids the same way.
And it's all based on fear, too.
Yeah, it has to be.
If you grew up in an area that doesn't have diverse and then all of a sudden you see diverse, your brain is like, oh, my God, fear, which is all bullshit.
Right.
But going back to that, I never really thought what you just said before I said my last comment of how do you teach that? That's insane.
All right, we're getting into that next segment.
Find Nearly Informed on Instagram and Twitter at Nearly Informed.
Getting deep today with Josh Nasar, changing the name of the show today from Nearly Informed to Getting Deep. Going Deep with Josh Nasar. But you brought up the Holocaust and that stuff, too.
I went over to the concentration camps.
I did, too. Which one did you go to?
I mean, I don't want to brag. I'm sorry.
I did the tour.
I went to Dachau.
Okay. I did not make it that far east. I went to Buchenwald, which is like the farthest west in Germany. But the first of the camps that actually had like somewhat of a death camp vibe to it, but nothing like the ones that are closer to Poland. Like, that is insane.
Death camp vibe. I mean, I just can't.
It's so insane. But once you go to Germany, you start looking at the camps, because as World War II was crumbling for the Germans, they just started they started shoveling people towards the east, to hide their war crimes.
So insane. And then people are Holocaust deniers. You're a dum-dum. There's literally pictures and video, dum-dum.
I want to slap Holocaust deniers.
Dum-dum.
Go to, so I don't know what your experience was like, but I remember that we walked, it was last December, and my girlfriend and I, she like loves history, which is cool because I do too. And when we go to Europe, I want to go see some of those places. I want to understand World War II. I want to wrap my head around, 20-somethings out there in the, coming from America to fight in the winter. And it was cold. It was like 31 degrees. It was snowing in Germany. We roll in, and I don't know if it felt like this for you when you walk through the gates of the camp, because the gates are insanely demonic, like sayings on them, the bars, the fences. It felt like we walked through the gate, and it's hard to explain, but the absence of sound, like it felt like somebody just sucked all of the life out of that entire area.
I do remember that feeling to the point where it was very cold. I think it was December when I went, and I remember just stopping and leaning down and touching the grass, like trying to like really feel where I was at. And I do remember that like that solid, heavy, quiet feeling.
Yeah, it felt like there's no wind.
Yeah, it was just demon. I mean, yeah, it's almost speechless because it's insane to wrap my head around that. And like you said, 20-somethings, like there was young kids going over there. I mean, this is it's all insane. And the crazy thing, and not getting too deep again, but we don't even talk about it now. The shit that's happened in society, we don't even talk about, really.
Yeah, it's
We're
wild.
like, I remember that. Like, it happened over there, that same thing. Like, oh, yeah, that happened like 40 years. That happened like 60 years ago.
Yeah,
80 years ago.
Not long enough to be saying, oh, come on.
Yeah, that will never happen again.
Oh, I mean, and I know people make that, the comparisons like, well, all you need is like, just a leader that's gonna be fascisty kind of dictatory type or rhetoric propaganda to motivate. It's like we try to act like that's impossible, but really, like, it still happens.
Yes.
It still happens in, like, Syria or, and even then people will make their excuses like, well, I mean, come on, Syria, we don't have Twitter and stuff. It's like, no, it's what happens when one person has too much power and is just going to make these sweeping decisions that, I mean, they're not publicizing that to everybody.
I feel as though because of the internet and us being more connected as humans, in my optimistic mind, that it will never get to this level again.
Right.
I know things are going on. I don't, but the more we get connected, I mean, I can literally hear something that's going on in Atlanta right now, and in Russia 2 seconds from now, and Yugoslavia. I mean, it's just before. There wasn't that communication for anybody to tweet or Facebook Live or anything. But yeah, there is still socialistic or dictators regimes.
And now I think we've seen, though, just to say, to go, because I would like to think the same thing. Oh, we're so connected now that you couldn't get something by me. But now it's like, who is the gatekeeper on the funnel of information? So for a while, it was like, oh, the internet became the Wild West. We could see anything we want because they hadn't regulated it. But now it's like, okay, you look at how Facebook and social media was able to dictate election results or sway people's opinions, whether it be quote unquote fake news or not. You're right. We can see there's so much out there.
But North Korea, they block it all
right,
off.
Who's
China,
holding the funnel?
Yeah, so I said that with a grain of salt, meaning there's still places that atrocities are going on. Mm-hmm. Syria. So it's not there yet. God willing, it will get so inundated with the social media or whatever that people will be able to speak out. I don't know how. Maybe it comes on the watch where nobody, somehow where it's like they can get those people that block the gatekeepers can be superseded somehow.
It's going to be MySpace. MySpace is going to come back and do it.
Now I feel like you're just doing stand-up comedy.
No, just
Do you mind if I run my entire set by you right now?
Do it, Josh.
It's an hour and a half. So where are you from?
Are you guys anyone celebrating anything in here? No, you're right. You're right about it. It just seems like we've gotten to a point where, and maybe this is how every generation feels, where they feel like, oh, that can't happen. Like, we know too much, or we've come too far.
Oh, it can still happen.
Right,
I still think.
But I'm saying I think there's people who living in Germany during the Nazi regime who were like, that's not happening. That's not happening. We know too much. Because I think we always think we don't have an ability to project ourselves into the future to say, oh no, we're going to know so much more in 15 years what we were doing. We always think right now is the most, well, it technically is. Every second is the most innovative and most sophisticated we've ever been.
Yes, but I just read something in North Korea. I don't remember the guy's name who got imprisoned and he came back.
Otto Warmfeld or something.
Okay, so from what I heard is in his own room, he ripped off something of Korean propaganda. He ripped
it was like a flag.
In his own house, in his own room. Mm-hmm. He ripped it down. And he was sentenced to 15 years.
He was trying to steal a North Korean flag that was hanging.
Okay.
In the hotel room.
So sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. So it's still happening.
Well, and he didn't even make it more than what? I mean, he was beaten. He was in a coma for, I think he was only in prison for like a little under a year, but he was in a coma for 10 months of it. When they got his body back and he passed away shortly after getting back to the United States, he had numerous parasites. The muscle deterioration when they did his physical was one of which, this guy has been laying in a coma on IVs and things for damn near 10 months.
And Trump is friends with Kim Jong-un.
I mean, that's insane to me.
He's friend. Oh, no, he said
He's
didn't
a sharp
do it.
guy.
Yeah, he said he didn't do it.
I mean, that part to me is, I mean, I don't, at this point in time in criticizing the president, it's just, to me, it's just like, it's yelling down an empty hallway. But when you start to, like that kind of thing, we can all pretty much come together, Republicans, Democrats, whatever you are, and just say, yeah, Kim Jong-un is a real dick. Like he does, like the way he runs his country, dictatorship, he's a real jerk, right? The guy is a monster. He's had people killed. He's had his own family members killed who he thought were maybe coming for the crown. And when it comes to like those hard labor camps, sure, he may not be the one specifically doing any of the things, but the way those prison camps are set up because that's how they want to treat you. Like at one point, Otto's parents said that his teeth looked like they were rearranged with pliers. Like the wrong teeth were in the wrong sockets for teeth. So they were pulled out and shoved into different, which is just a level of torture, which is insane to me. It's a crazy person thing.
It almost literally left me speechless. And then you said it's just yelling down a corridor. Like I'm getting angry right now at you specifically, but I'm also getting angry, and I feel just helpless to not to do anything. And then Republicans, some of them are like, yeah, he's good. We'll support Trump.
Well, I think the thing about it is I think, and it's kind of going back to what we were talking about with technology, about we have access to so much, yet the inundation almost makes it ineffective in a way where our attention span for a news cycle is close to nothing.
What'd you say?
Yeah, right? It happens in a second. So, we're all pissed off. Michael Cohen testimony. Oh my God, all this. He's just corroborating all these things we already thought, right? All these stories we already heard. He's corroborating. And then the next day, Jordan Woods.
Yeah.
Made out with Tristan Thompson and Khloe Kardashian. Booed him. And guess what? Travis Scott may have cheated on Kylie. And everyone's like, oh my. And then we're like, dude, 2 days ago, Michael Cohen was testifying to Congress in a way that is a could be, I think it's historic regardless, could be the craziest thing to happen in our lifetime in terms of politics, is having a quote-unquote fixer from Long Island. That's my favorite part about it, if you're from the East Coast, is how Long Island that dude sounds.
Yeah.
He's like, how many times do you intimidate somebody for the president? 500.
100? No, more.
No, more.
2, 3,
more.
500 times.
It's all stuff we already kind of knew, though, right?
I'm just thinking real quick. I just want to figure that out. I just want to figure out what is 500 divided by 10.
The 10 years he worked there,
yeah,
right?
So that's once a week. It's about 50 times a year. Once a week, he was literally intimidating and destroying someone. By the way, it's only taking 2 weeks off for vacation a year.
It's like people said the dude.
Jeez, that's a lot.
That's insane.
Once a week, I'm going to threaten the shit out of you, Brian.
People said that Andy King from the Firefest documentary, the guy who was going to prepare to blow somebody to get water released, was like the best kind of friend you could have, right? I think the best kind of friend you can have is someone who's going to threaten someone once a week for you.
And really threaten them. These were big things. And never taking a week off.
With his dead Michael Cohen look.
Jesus.
This is Nearly Informed with Brad and Brian.
All right, segment 4. We've gone deep, Josh. Josh Nasar, where do people find you on social media?
At Josh Nasar, JOSHNA, single S-AR, across all platforms.
He's done the thing. He's branded himself effectively. We were talking about this earlier this week on the show, but the people who stubbornly refuse to change, they've got a Twitter that's something weird, and then their Instagram is something weird. It's like, just find something weird that's just unanimous across the board. All you got to do is one thing. You can find one thing. I know your name might be common, but just one thing where you, especially if you're going to be in the business.
Well, hope, God willing, your brand becomes your personality.
That's
personality. True. You know what I mean? Like Brian Moote, Amp Radio, Brian Moote, comedian. It's just there, and then they can sell you anywhere.
Synonymous.
Speaking
of the business, you have a pretty fascinating, from my perspective, kind of a career so far you've built and continue to build.
I used to sell frozen meat door to door.
That's real?
For 21 years, I sold frozen meat. Hey, Brian, sorry to bother. Wholesale steak, seafood, and chicken.
For 21 years?
Show you what I got. Now, what kind of steak do I have? New York strips, Delmonico's, ribeyes, T-bones, hamburger patties. Brian, if I can't pack a freezer, you get it for free.
Jeez. How did you get into that?
When I was 18, my football coach was starting a business, and it was door-to-door, high impulse buy, kind of like, have you heard of Omaha Steaks?
Yep.
You know that.
Yeah.
So one of my friends...
now they got Butcher Box and some of those, they ship them to you.
So my one friend was making $2-3 a week driving a Porsche. He was 20 years old, and he's like, do you want to do this? So I learned how to do door-to-door sales, which is great in life and in business because you just keep knocking, and you literally can get 8 hours of no, you're an asshole, get out of here, and then one person goes, oh, I'll buy everything.
That's wild. Yeah. And also I think really if you take that mentality of keep knocking for 8 hours, get no, it translates so much to just learning how to be a person who's in any business, but entertainment, whatever, just keep putting yourself out there. No doesn't mean you suck. It just means I'm not into it.
No, actually, no doesn't mean no. It just means I don't know enough information. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Positive mental attitude equals other people's money. PMA equals OPM.
Wow. And you did that for 18 years?
I did it for 21 years.
21 years.
I sold the frozen meat. I started my own company. I had 22 guys working for me.
Jeez.
Had a house literally across the street from Kanye West, making money. And I woke up one day and I literally wasn't happy. And like I talked to my mom about it, and she's like, well, what you're doing is not illegal. And I go, it feels to me immoral, because what I'm doing is I'm knocking door to door. I'm finding people's weaknesses or strengths or whatever and using that to convince them to buy a ridiculous amount of meat. And I was good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really good at it, and people were happy. I made a lot of lifelong friends doing it, but it didn't feel as clean as I want my life to be.
Yeah, or, I mean, also, I'm clearly you're a creative person.
Yeah.
Probably at some point in time, you're like, I mean, am I maximizing my creative potential by just kind of,
No.
selling meat and talking and, doing that?
Want to hear something deep, too? I figured out in therapy.
Deep, Josh.
Okay.
We're going deep.
My stepdad, I could never get his attention and validation. I could never get him to say yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So every time I convinced somebody door to door to buy meat and say yes, I was getting my stepfather's attention, love, and validation in my subconscious.
Like just, yeah.
Because they were saying yes, I was like, I'm convincing him to love me.
That's interesting. And so because of that void you didn't even know you were trying to fill was why
I was
no
so
matter
good.
how many yeses you heard, you still didn't feel
I go out and make $3,000,
fulfilled
$4,000,
about it.
$5,000 in a day.
Jeez.
Boom, 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 boom. I'd be like, hey, Brian, I got to go make $3,000. I'll see you in a couple hours.
That's unbelievable. And that's just selling door to door.
Selling frozen meat. And I got so good at it that I didn't even sell out of a truck anymore. I put it in the trunk of my car in the boxes, and I would knock on the door. It had a Jaguar with spinners.
With spinners?
Yeah.
That's so like mid-2000s.
Spray tan, Ed Hardy shirt. Hey, I'm the owner of the company. We did 1.5 months more business last week. We did 3.5 more business over the month. We're just getting.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just that.
Gee, so you just had you just rattle it off.
Well, I got lemon pepper, honey mustard, plain barbecue. Again, if I can't pack
you
a
might
freezer.
you might get me on that lemon pepper. I didn't know about lemon pepper until I moved to the South.
Yeah.
I was like, where? Because lemon pepper is all the rage down there. The lemon pepper wings down in the South. And I was like, where the hell has
All
this
the
been my
rage.
whole life? Where has this been?
Oh, it's comes from prime cut steak and seafood, and I can give you a good deal. I mean, it's literally like that.
Jeez. So yeah, you're just chatting with people, connecting with them. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Oh my God, Memphis.
Oh my God, my dad's gay, my dad's black, my dad's white, my dad's orange. I'm a Latino. I'm this. I own a car wash. You own a car. I mean, you literally were everything they were.
So did you sell the company, or what did you do
No.
with it?
So I had a bunch of assets. I had trucks. So let's say I owed $7,000 on each truck. I just sold them for $7,000. I got rid of it. So I had no money in that. All of the food that I owned, I had already paid for. So I just sold that for what I paid for it. And I literally got rid of it. I started from zero, and I moved into a studio apartment on Sunset Boulevard that was run down and old. And I restarted again, and I started shopping at the 99-cent store. And I had no money to my name. And I was like, I'm not going back to selling the meat.
So when you were at the height of your selling meat, you were living like you were making a lot, but spending a lot.
I was literally at zero because I say it's kind of like stripper money. If you've ever talked to a girl who strips, to me it's not a happy existence.
Right.
And it's soul-sucking. So as much money as you make, you spend that on a car or a purse.
But
or
you're
this.
living at your means exactly.
And you're living at your means because it's so soul-sucking. So as much money as I made during the meet, I felt very empty and depleted.
Yeah.
So I was spending exactly that much.
I did the same thing when I got my first radio job because, comedian, and it's funny because you mentioned the studio on Sunset. I was in a studio on Sunset in Gower. I lived in bunk beds with my brother, and it was one of those things where, I only had money I was making from stand-up, so I'd go on the road or whatever. And then when I got my first radio job, that was a steady check. I remember coming down here and taking, everybody to, Musso and Frank's and just being like, whatever you got. Like, guys, I just struck a gold mine of, and it took me about 2 years to stop feeling. I paid rent on an apartment down here, having one in Seattle, just because I didn't want to move out of my roommates, because I felt so bad because I knew they couldn't afford not having someone else paying for that room that I had, and I was living in the living room at that point, so it wasn't even another room.
Right, but you were given money.
Right, and it took
Good for
me
you.
about 2 years to stop feeling like almost that imposter syndrome where you're like, oh, I don't have to pay for your stuff.
Ever.
Yeah, I don't have to.
Never, ever, ever.
Just
People need
feeling
to be able to
guilty.
take care of themselves.
But how much? So you get rid of the business.
So I got rid of the business. I started over. I started doing all the open mics. I had a couple TV shows before that while I was doing the kind of steak thing, but I literally started over at all the open mics.
Yeah, that was interesting because you actually sold TV shows.
So when I first started out, by age of 25, I was on the show called Singled Out, doing crowd warm-up, and then I was on every episode doing characters.
Yeah.
I did crowd warm-up for 7 different TV shows, all of the spring breaks of MTV. I was on a workout show in the morning on ESPN. I had my own show on ESPN called American Muscle, where I'd fly around the world and interview bodybuilders.
Really?
Yeah, I went to Trinidad, I went Hawaii, I went everywhere, and I interviewed bodybuilders, and I made it fun, though, because a lot of them are, they're not as TV savvy, and I was really jacked at the time. So I would talk about their diets, what they do, what they train, what their motivation is. But then all of it kind of went away, and I started running this business, and then I just literally restarted 9 years ago, November 16th.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. And now I wake up I'm not joking, every single day I wake up happy. Every day I'm like, hi. Every day.
That is such a difference I think that there's people who, like my dad would say, I mean, before he went to prison, he was, on the surface, he was running a very successful law firm. Now, behind the scenes, he was, in over his head, spending money out of trust funds he wasn't supposed to fund cases. And he said it got to a point where he felt like he was handcuffed to being a lawyer when really he wanted to just be a basketball coach and like, he should have been. He was in his 40s or early 50s. He didn't really want to be working like he was working, and he hated it every day. And his ultimate goal was just to barely dig out.
And you do really feel handcuffed. Is he out of jail now?
Yeah, he's out of prison.
And is he doing? What is he doing?
Yeah, he's a chemical dependency counselor in Seattle.
And is he happy?
Oh, he loves it. Every day he goes in, he makes just enough to have an apartment and pay his bills and, go out on the occasional date with the girl that he's seeing.
And he's happy.
He loves it. Every single day he texts me, he'll say like, yo, like today I helped a guy, he's had suicidal thoughts. I helped convince him, a very proud guy, into going into a rehabilitation program, an inpatient for suicidal thoughts. He's like, I've never felt happier. I've never felt more successful for doing something that I love in my life. I was like, man, you missed it. You became a business law guy. And what you should have been is just a chemical dependency counselor. That's what you wanted to be. And it took you 66 years to figure it out, but at least you finally made it to what you wanted to do.
And I'm at the point where I'm $61,000 in debt on my credit card. I mean, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. I figured it out. I just consolidated my debt, and I'm keep on going. I'll sell one show and get rid of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's all bullshit. Have fun.
Yeah, it is. It is such a mindset. I think, and I have to remind myself that sometimes too when I'm tired or I'm like, oh man, it's like the radio show. I'm like, the radio show. You won the lottery.
Your
Brian. Job is to just have fun.
You won and you know what? My buddy Dean Del Rey. I was talking to him, and he started comedy at like 44. He goes, dude, I don't care how much success I have. Anything that I do is a win because if not, I'd be swinging a hammer at a construction site.
Right.
So he's like, I wake up every day grateful. I'm, paraphrasing because I don't have to swing a hammer.
It's funny, and doesn't matter how successful you get if you're not happy with what you're doing. Like we interviewed Halsey on the morning show, and she said that it took hanging out with the guy she's hanging out with now, Youngblood, who's like a brand new British guy, rock, like he's really new to being kind of semi-famous. And she's like, she had to work to remind herself that music is fun. Yeah. Because it was a point where it was like, here, go there, do this, do that. And she's like, I didn't want to, I had to bust my ass to remind myself that this is fun. This is what I want to do. But you get so wrapped up in the other components of it.
Well, people forget this. It's show business, music business. It's not called music. If it was called music, then Halsey would be like, oh. So what you entered in is show business or music business. So that's what I learned, that it is part of business. Like I don't even like you. And I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm always on. I'm always on. I'm sorry.
This is a business.
This is literally a business decision.
Sometimes you got to get rid of the meat business, Josh.
Sorry.
All right, follow Josh Nasar. It is at Josh Nasar on all platforms, Nasar.
And Getting Ready with Josh Nasar is my podcast.
Oh, yeah, that's really real quick before we get out of here. And that the premise I thought was awesome.
Yeah, basically I interview doctors, lawyers, celebrities, comedians, anybody who's successful at their business, and I find out the minutia of what they do to get ready for success, whether it's overall or for individual events.
That's amazing. All right, thank you for listening to Nearly Informed. Please follow Josh, follow the show. You guys are great.
This is Nearly Informed. If you like this show, find it on the radio.com app and subscribe.
Ah, summer. Time to hit the open road and explore the boundless beauty this country has to offer. And, of course, your kid's in the backseat arguing over whether you can lick your own elbow. Traffic hasn't moved in 48 minutes, and every time you roll down the window, more mosquitoes invade the car. Fortunately, a McDonald's is never far away, where you can get a fresh beef quarter pounder, the easier way to enjoy summer. At participating U.S. McDonald's, excludes Alaska, Hawaii, and U.S. territories.